Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Aisha, for the introduction. I'll just take you through the introduction of what is the IUCN Red List. First and foremost, IUCN stands for the International Union for Conservation of Nature. So it is an important thing to understand that the purpose of the IUCN Red List is to measure the species risk of extinction. So it is important also to understand that some people commonly misunderstood it or misunderstand it as some sort of a conservation priority setting exercise to determine which species needs conservation attention. And that is not the case. So it helps us to understand or answer questions in knowing what is the likelihood of a species to go extinct within the near future. So it does this by categorizing the species from the lowest risk of extinction to the higher risk of extinction. And this is the most comprehensive information source for the extinction risk of species, because it compiles a conservation status of species at a global level based on the best scientific information available. And then the species are assigned to one of the 9 categories, which are linked using the population trend, the size, distribution of the species. And it has also, within the 9 categories that are listed within the red list, it has 3 that are identified as threatened, and those include the critically endangered and vulnerable species. And this information in the IUCN Red List is widely used to inform or influence the biodiversity and making IUCN Red List a global standard, informing and influencing the biodiversity conservation and in decision making, as well as understanding that it is a global gold standard for informing the conservation action. So it helps to prioritize and have conservation measures. So the IUCN Red List is more than just a list of names and codes. Each assessment includes information that is useful, as I've just mentioned, that it includes population science as well as trends, the distribution where the species occur, the ecology, or whether the preference for a species to occur, whether the species is used by people, or what the threats and current future recommended conservation measures on research action. So the species assessments are generated through available knowledge from thousands of world leading conservation scientists, species experts, and each assessment is also checked through a review process to ensure that it is of high quality, because these assessments are used to make important decisions. And not so long ago, it was officially recognized as an online scientific journal. So all the assessments that are published, they are listed on the IUCN Red List website, and they are available as PDFs with unique digital object identifier numbers. And it is also encouraged that assessors, they produce these assessments in such a quality that they would be published in a scientific journal, and they will be of a high quality standard. So that is very encouraged, because it's widely used for important decisions and decision making. So the goal of the IUCN Red List is, what it's trying to do is to provide information and analyze the status, the trends, and threats of species in order to inform and catalyze action for biodiversity conservation. So the goal includes the traditional role of IUCN Red List in identifying particular species at risk of extinction. And while the role of the IUCN Red List is in underpinning the priority setting processes for single species, it also remains of critical importance that it has been expanded to encompass the use of Red List data for multi-species analysis in order to identify and monitor trends in the status of biodiversity, and to also catalyze appropriate conservation actions. So to achieve this goal, the IUCN Red List aims to establish a baseline on which to monitor the change in status of species, to provide a goal context to for the establishment of conservation priorities at the local level, and monitor a continuing basis the status of representative selection of species that cover all major ecosystems of the world. As I've just mentioned, the IUCN, it is used to estimate the extinction risk. So to check what is the likelihood of a species to become extinct. So the assessment itself is to estimate the extinction risk of a species. So the IUCN Red List classifies species by their risk of becoming extinct by highlighting species that are most likely to become extinct in the near future, given the knowledge of the population trends, the range, the structure, the size, or whether there are any projected threats or suspected threats in the near future to affect the species. However, the Red List is not the final list of species of highest priority for conservation action. So a species with a high risk of extinction may not necessarily be of highest priority for receiving conservation action. Equally, for a species that currently has a low risk of extinction, it may also deserve some conservation action. So clearly, it's clearly important to understand that it's not just for prioritizing species that are of conservation importance, but it's an important factor to consider when determining which species to invest in. And it's not the only factor that is also considered when prioritizing species for conservation. There are other things or other sources or factors that are involved in prioritizing the species or for conservation action. So you'd consider the biological, the social, and logistical factors in addition to the extinction risk to maximize the effectiveness of the conservation action. So it's important to keep in mind that when doing a Red List assessment, one should not put feelings when they're conducting an assessment. For example, one would have a species, a particular species maybe that they like, and they would feel that it deserves a higher threat category status, and they would disregard all the other factors that are involved in in completing an assessment. So it's important to use all the best available information to complete a Red List assessment, and no feelings should be put into categorizing species, because sometimes you'll find that some species are given low priority based on the feelings of how the assessor is feeling on completing the assessment, because they're putting the feelings onto it. So it's important to put aside all those things and consider all the information that is available and measure the species against the right categories and criteria, which my colleagues Simi will take you through in the next presentation. So who is involved in the IUCN? So it's a large body, which is consisting of a lot of members, and they are responsible for compiling and managing the IUCN. So the IUCN is one of the oldest and the largest international conservation networks, which was formed in 1948 and has been creating red data books and red lists for more than 60 years. Through the union, and they also work on other issues that are related to conservation of nature, in addition to the species work. It is made up of thousands of members. It includes the government entities, states, and the NGOs. And most of the staffs are located around the world. And it also involves your conservation scientists, the experts, as well as citizen scientists, because they now play a bigger role when we complete the Red List assessments. And one of the 6 commissions, the Species Survival Commission, is the largest, and it works directly in the production of the IUCN and the IUCN Red List. This is the Species Survival Commission, which we are also part of here in Southern Africa. There's a group, or specialist groups that we are also part of in helping in completing assessments for the Southern Africa region. The Survival Commission consists of 1,000 volunteers, as I've mentioned, and it includes experts and specialists located all over the world. And the Species Survival membership is a group of specialist group which they deal with taxonomic origin, they focus on taxonomic original issues. And these experts provide the knowledge and data that go into the Red List work, and they work closely with the IUCN Red List unit to review the Red List assessments. And the Species Survival Commission is headed by a chair, and it is guided by the steering committee. And the work that the Species Survival Commission receives, they receive technical support from the IUCN Global Species Program. The Global Species Program consists of several units, and it includes the Red List units and other units that are focusing on invasive species and the trade and use. They also involved in marine work and freshwater systems. And there are a lot of other NGOs that are involved in compiling the Red List, or assisting in helping in compiling the Red List and carrying out the conservation assessments. So anyone can carry a Red List assessment as long as you go through a training process, there's modules that are available online where you can equip yourself to be able to carry out conservation assessments. You don't need to be a scientist or a member of the IUCN, but if you feel that you are interested in helping completing the Red List assessments, you can do so. But you do need information from the entire global range of species you are assessing. So in practice, most of the species of the assessments that are carried out by the members of the IUCN Species Survival Commission Specialist Group Network. So most of the assessments are combined by those species survival groups. And the network involves more than 9,000 scientists who volunteer their time, their data, and they also help with the knowledge, or if they know a particular species, they will provide that information. And we also have a Red List partnership that involves a range of institutions who help with funding, and they manage the Red List, including some of the databases, the websites, the assessment projects around the world. And the IUCN Red List unit in Cambridge has overall responsibility for managing and updating and publishing the IUCN Red List. But this is done in a collective effort of thousands of people. So what you see up on the slide, this is the guys who are heading the Red List unit based in Cambridge, and they help with managing the IUCN Red List. And there's also a database where these assessments are completed and they're published online. They help with developing the guidelines and standards, and they facilitate workshops, and they also provide the tools, capacity building all around the world. And they also support with technical advice. And they have a very big job because once the assessments are submitted, they go through them and they make sure that they are of high quality and they are ready to be published on an online website. So it's a bigger job that they do. As you can see, it's a smaller team and they are servicing the whole world. And they get help from others, from people like us who are also completing the Red List assessments. And how can a Red List data be used? So the data that is produced through the Red List is widely used to influence the biodiversity conservation and making sure that the IUCN Red List is of global standard for informing conservation action. Like here in South Africa, we also use the species data when we're reporting on the state of the biodiversity. And it's used by many different sectors to influence the biodiversity conservation, as I've mentioned. And it is widely used in developing the indicators to influence the conservation and decision making. For example, the IUCN and its Red List partners regularly publish analysis on the IUCN Red List data, informing us of the current status of the world species. The analyses are available to download from the IUCN website. And it is also an important tool used to inform conservation planning and setting priority for conservation areas and other key biodiversity areas, as well as expansion of protected areas. The spatial data is also available on the Red List, and it is used to identify where the highest concentration of certain species are found and where the gaps are in the protected area network. And the Red List is also used in the conservation action plans to determine which conservation measures are most critical to protect species. The Red List has also been adopted by other several international conservation policies and agreements as an indicator of the status of biodiversity. For example, the Red List data can be used to measure the progress towards many of the CBD targets. And it also helps in identifying species to be included in CITES and TOPS appendices. It was also used in Red List indexes. And it's an important tool in driving the funding mechanisms. And it also cooperates businesses and like many corporates and businesses, they also conduct the Red List. And sometimes if maybe there are developments, it's also used in environmental impact assessments to inform whether in the area maybe where they want to develop, there are any species of conservation concern. And yeah, so but finally, or one of the most important roles of the Red List is it is a communication tool, because it highlights the importance of biodiversity and the ecosystem, the healthy ecosystem to the public, private and politicians, etc. It's one of the strengths of the Red List is that it doesn't just focus on threatened species, but it can also be used to highlight other species other than the ones that are threatened, like the ones that have insufficient information, some that are least concerned, or some that are listed as near threatened. And it's very important to highlight all those things, and it also helps in informing the decision making.